Now each of our li elements contains the to-do text, but they don't yet show the completed property. So we need to indicate whether or not our to-dos have been completed. Here, if I have a list of to-dos and I mark one of them as being completed, you can see that there is an indication in the console, but nothing has changed in the listing on the page. So that's what we're going to be working on in this next phase of our application. What we want to create is we want to create a string that looks something like this, what's showing in the console. We want to have the parentheses with the X, and then we want to list the text if the item has been completed. Let's go into our code and outline this. I'll just come down here and I'm going to create a multi-line comment. And what we want to do is we want a string of text that is going to take on the formatting that we want. So that information makes sense to store it inside of a variable. So let's create a variable, and let me call the variable tdText with completion. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to set that to some sort of string. So the information that is within this variable is going to change on whether or not the completed property is going to be true or false. We'll also need to have some sort of if statement, and the if statement is going to be checking to see if our to-do dot completed is equal to true. And if that is true, we want to print the formatting that we're using to indicate that the text is true. And if that is not true, we'll do an else statement, and our else statement is just going to print the empty indicator showing that our to-do text has still yet to be completed. And then finally what we want to do is we're going to want to take the variable called tdli.textContent, and as you remember from before, we use the text content property to be able to access the text node of that li element, and we're going to set that equal to the value of our tdText with completion. So let's go ahead and let's take this information and let's put it into the existing code that we have. Let's write this in a way that's going to be formatted inside of our existing code. So what we'll do here is we're going to need to create another variable that is going to store each particular to-do. And this is going to allow us to get one to-do, and we'll iterate through there by using I. So since we're going to be repeating this code in several places, it makes sense to create a variable to store it. So what we'll do here is we'll create a variable. I'm just going to call this variable to-do, and I'm going to make it equal to my tdlist.todos, and we'll pass in our I element. So this line of code right here is allowing us to store each particular to-do, which is allowing us to get one to-do. And that's going to be accomplished by using the I counter that we have in our for loop. And because I'm going to be using this code in several places, it's going to just consolidate things down by making it into a variable. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have our variable called tdText with completion, and I'll just define that right here as well. We're going to set this to nothing to start off with. So it's a good idea to initialize to a string just to make it clear that the variable is ultimately going to be holding a string of some sort. This line of code is probably not necessary in order to make our application run, but it just kind of makes things a little cleaner and a little more clear for someone else who's going to possibly be using the code. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to create my if statement. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say if, and then inside the parentheses, I'm going to say to-do dot completed, and we're going to set that equal to true. So we're comparing and seeing if in fact that is true, and then I'll open my curly braces. So inside this if statement, we want to check to see if to-do.completed is true, if that has occurred. And then inside my curly braces, I'm going to use my new variable name, TD text with completion, and I'm going to set that equal to, and I'm going to specify the string of text that I want it to be. So if it's completed, I want to show the opening parentheses with the X in it, and I'm going to put in a space, and then I will use my plus sign, and I'm going to concatenate that with my to-do text. So I'm combining the string with the to-do text so that if the to-do is completed, it will actually print out this along with the to-do text. And then we'll go ahead and we'll create our else statement. And the else statement is essentially going to be the same exact line of code here. We're just going to change the formatting so that it shows the empty parentheses, indicating that this to-do has not yet been completed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify my tdli.text content, and we're going to make that equal to the value of the TD text with completion. And because I'm redefining what the TD text content is going to be, we're now going to populate it with the value of our TD text with completion. This line of code is no longer necessary. It doesn't represent the completion data, so we don't need it. So we're just going to get rid of that, and we'll use this line to indicate that information instead. And since this is my last object, it's not a problem, but I did neglect to put my semicolon, so I'm just going to put that there. And I no longer need these comments, so I'll get rid of those just to tidy up my code. So if we save this now and we test it and run it in the browser, I'm going to clear everything out and we'll add something here. And then in the console, I'm going to run my display.displayTDs, and we should see the empty uncompleted item showing on the page. So if we go ahead and make this item completed, so now the item is completed, and we run our display.displayTD, now you can see that it's changing to show our indicator that this is completed. And let's just add another item, and if we go ahead and display the items, you can see that the new task is not complete and the important task has been completed. So in this way, it is giving us the feedback that we need, and these things are working in the way that we would want them to. So for this portion of the application, we created two new variables. We created the TD text with completion, which combines whether the to-do has been completed or not. And based on whether that to-do has been completed, it's going to show a different representation of the string text. And finally, it's going to take the variable that has been set based on the if statement and set it equal to the text content of the TDLI element. And then we're going to append that to the unordered list. So now we really don't need the console anymore. This is now giving the user an indication of what needs to be done, and it allows them to kind of manage their to-do within the browser window.